In the South Pacific, the history and beliefs of the people are told in stories that go back centuries. These stories are not written, but live as spoken words, passed on from parent to child, family to family, year after year. In the modern world, it is easy for oral traditions to be lost. Ole Pacifikiwe, on the island of Tico, loves these old stories, so he writes them down. But it is slow work. It would be wonderful to have a typewriter. I hear you're collecting oral traditions. Good work, said Mr. Harold Munt. I'm pleased to hear that someone is writing down these old stories before they're lost forever. Mr. Munt was a diplomat. His voice was friendly, but he sounded like a teacher speaking to a schoolboy. Thank you, sir, Ole Pacifikiwe said shyly. He was not usually shy, except with foreigners, but tonight he was at a drinks party for diplomats in the beautiful gardens of the International Nightlight Hotel, and he found conversation difficult. Ole spent most of the free time from his job collecting oral traditions. He felt that God was telling him to do this work, and it had become the great interest of his life. He had begun by writing down his own family's history and stories, then went on to other families in the village, and then to neighbouring villages. In 7 years, he had covered a fifth of his island country. He wrote with a pen in notebooks, which he kept in a tall pile in a corner of his house. He hoped that one day he would have a typewriter and some filing cabinets to keep all the papers safe. People at Mercy, the Ministry of Environment, Religion, Culture and Youth, knew about Ole's work on oral traditions and thought it was a very fine thing. A senior official in Mercy, who was also a good friend of Ole's, had invited him to the drinks party to meet Mr. Munt, because Mr. Munt was in Tico to talk about development and to find out where aid and money were needed. Perhaps some money will make your work easier, Mr. Munt said now to Ole. That'll help a lot, sir, said Ole. We have development money, especially for cultural projects like this. We want to make sure that the Pacific Way is not lost. We want to help you. Very kind of you, sir. When can I have some money? After you've written me a letter asking for aid. Do I have to? Can't you just send some money? You haven't done business with us before, have you? No, sir. Things are not as simple as that, you know. We have the money to give away, but first you must ask us. Tell us what you want. We don't want to tell you what you should do. My job is to tell people that we want to work together, and people should ask us for help. Do you understand? Yes, sir. But suppose no one asks, said Ole. That's no problem. When people know they can get things from us for nothing, they will ask. Come and see me at 10 tomorrow morning at the Mercy Building. Think of what I've said, and we'll talk about it then. I'm pleased we've met. Good night. Soon, Ole left the party and went home, feeling worried and uncomfortable. He had never before asked for anything from a stranger. I'm not a beggar, he thought. If Mr. Mint has money to give away, why doesn't he just give it? Why must I beg for it? He began to have feelings of hate for Mr. Mint. He needed a typewriter and some filing cabinets, not for himself, but for the important work he was doing. But he was too proud to ask for them. Was it wrong to be proud? Probably. It wasn't easy to ask for things from a stranger. But he had to do it, because there was no other way of getting a typewriter and some filing cabinets. Oh well, he thought, as he lay in bed that night. It's like breaking the law, I suppose. After you've done it once, it just gets easier and easier. At 10 the next morning, Ole was at the Mercy building. Good morning, Ole, said Mr. Mint. Have you decided if you want help from us? Yes, sir. I'd like to have a typewriter and some filing cabinets. I'll write you a letter. Thank you. Now, Ole, I'm afraid that's not possible. We don't want to tell people what to do with our money, but there are things that we cannot pay for. My minister at home has to explain to the government how our development money is used. Why does a project about oral traditions in an island culture need a modern machine like a typewriter? No, the government won't like that at all. But I need a typewriter because... No, Mr. Mint said. You have to think again. What you ask for must look right, feel right for the project. He stopped for a moment. Look, we can give you $2,000 a year for the next 5 years for a newsletter about your project. Publish a newsletter every month and send us 1 copy, okay? But I still need a typewriter to publish a newsletter, said Ole. Try using a Mercy typewriter. And you will have to have a committee, you know. A committee? What for? Said Ole. I've worked alone for 7 years, and no committee has been interested in me. Oh, they will be, when they hear there is good development money. But we don't give to people, you see, only to committees. Get a group of people together, call them the Oral Traditions Committee or something, which will then write to us for help. Do you understand? Mr. Mint looked at his watch. I'm sorry, I have to go now to talk to the National Women's Organisation. Your women are much better at starting committees than your men, you know. Their organisations get lots and lots of development money. Think about it, and come again tomorrow at the same time. See you then. Mr. Mint went out and disappeared into a long, shiny black car. Ole stayed in the office, keeping very still and breathing deeply until he felt calmer. He always did this when he was angry. Finally, he got up and walked slowly to the office of his friend, Emmy Buggerup, the senior Musi official. Emmy sat quietly and listened until Ole finished speaking. "The trouble with you is that you're too honest," Emmy said, "and too proud." "It's not being proud," said Ole. "It's self-respect." "Oh, self-respect is very fine, of course," Emmy said. "But we can't afford it now. When our country is developed, then we can be proud and have lots of self-respect." "And suppose our country is never developed," said Ole. "We will develop," said Emmy. "Of course we will. You have to believe that the future is full of hope for us. Remember that we're playing international games. The other players have the money and we don't. Simple as that. They make the rules and we try to make the rules work better for us. Look at Mr. Mint. He offers you $2,000 for 5 years and he wants you to start a committee. Then the committee writes a letter asking for funds and publishes a monthly newsletter. That's all. But he didn't say anything about what kind of committee or who should be on it, did he? You can get 3 or 4 friends to be your committee. Get people who aren't very interested and who don't know very much. Then you'll be free to do the things you need. And the letter will come from the committee, not from you yourself, so your self-respect will not be hurt in any way. Although that doesn't really matter, of course. Another thing, Mr. Mint didn't say how long the newsletter should be, did he? You can write it in a page or 2, and it will take you about half an hour each month. And you don't have to write it in English. And if you wish, you can just publish 2 copies, one for you and one for Mr. Mint. I'm not telling you to do this. That would be dishonest, you see. I'm only explaining to you one of the possible ways to play this game. And most importantly, Emmy continued, Mr. Mint didn't say what you should do with the rest of the money. So, you pay perhaps $2 a year for your newsletter, and with the rest of the money, you can buy a typewriter and 4 filing cabinets every year for 5 years. You see, Mr. Mint is very good and very kind. He's been playing international games for a long, long time, and he understands the rules. He wants you to have your typewriter and the other things, but won't say it. Go see him tomorrow and tell him you'll do what he told you. But remember that when you are doing business with foreigners, don't be too clever. It's better to look like a poor, grateful islander who knows nothing. And you're too fat. Try to get thinner. We need to look like poor, hungry people. The reason why Tico gets very little aid money is because our people are too fat and happy. I wish our government would realize that and do something about it. And so, Emmy Buggerup, who had put his own self-respect away in a dark cupboard many years ago, taught his friend, the learner, the ways of the world. When Ole left the office, he felt much less worried. Almost happy, in fact. He had begun to understand some of life's many problems. "Give me time, dear God," he thought, as he walked towards the bus stop, "and I will become an excellent player of this game." "A word with you, old friend?" Manu's voice stopped him. "Oh, hello, Manu," Ole said. "Long time no see. Where have you been?" "Watching you, old friend. You have that look on your face," Manu said simply. "What look?" asked Ole, not understanding. "The look of someone who's been listening to people like Emmy Buggerup. I'm worried about you. I must tell you before it's too late. Don't let Emmy or people like him persuade you to do something you